Okay, so good afternoon, my dear students. Welcome to our virtual class for this afternoon. Before I start, may I request everyone to mute your microphone to avoid unnecessary noise and distractions, and turn off your video as well. And please observe proper behavior during our virtual class. Okay, so I am Maria Ana C. Robles, your online learning coordinator or your OLC. I am one of the faculty members of College of Arts and Sciences at AMA Malolos City, Bulacan. Okay, so for our course code, we have here UGRDN 102 42113T, and this is Communication Skills 2. And our topic for this afternoon is the part 1 of kinds of communication. Okay. For our learning objectives, at the end of the discussion, we will be able to define communication and then differentiate the two kinds of communication, which are verbal and non-verbal communication, and then identify and explain the different kinds of non-verbal communication. Okay, so these are our learning objectives. Now, last time we discussed the nature of communication, okay, and the process of communication. Now, let's have first a review of what communication is. Okay, now communication, or the word communication, is derived from the Latin word communicare or communis. Okay, so that is the etymology of the word communication, which means to share, to impart, to participate, exchange, transmit, or to make common. Okay, so it emphasizes on sharing common information, ideas, and messages. It is not merely issuing orders and instructions, but more on emphasizing sharing common information, ideas, and messages. Now, communication can broadly be defined as exchange of ideas, messages, and information between two or more persons through a medium in a manner that the sender and the receiver understand the message in the common sense. That is, they develop common understanding of the message. Okay, now communication has the following features. It is a two-way process. Why is communication a two-way process? It is a two-way process of understanding between two or more persons, which are the sender and the receiver, which are the main elements of communication. Because a person cannot communicate with himself. So it is a two-way process of the sender and the receiver. It is also a continuous process wherein exchange of ideas and opinion amongst people is an ongoing process in business and non-business organizations. Continuous interaction promotes understanding and exchange of information relevant for decision making. It is also a dynamic process. Okay, communication between sender and receiver takes different forms and medium depending upon their moods and behavior. It is thus a dynamic process that keeps changing and in different situations. Okay, what makes a communication dynamic is that it keeps on changing in different situations. It is also pervasive. Communication is a pervasive activity. It takes place at all levels, whether top, middle, or low. in all functional areas, whether in production, whether in finance, personnel, sales, personnel, education, or any business organization, family, academe, and others. So it prevails anywhere, okay, at all levels. Okay, it takes two people to communicate, okay? A minimum of two persons or more, the sender and receiver, must be present for communication to take place. It may be between superior or superiors, subordinates, and peer groups, whether intra or inter personal communication, okay? It is an exchange because it involves exchange of ideas and opinions. People interact and develop understanding for each other. Okay. It is also a means of unifying organizational activities because communication unifies internal organizational environment with its external environment. It also integrates the human and the physical resources and converts them into organizational output. Okay, so communication is verbal and non-verbal. Though words are active carriers of information, gestures can sometimes be more powerful than words. So facial expressions, sounds, signs, and symbols are the non-verbal forms of communication. We will be discussing that further later on. Okay, communication entails mutual understanding. Communication is effective when sender and receiver develop mutual understanding of the subject. Messages conveyed should be understood by the receiver in the desired sense. Okay, communication is goal-oriented. Okay, unless the receiver and sender know the purpose they intend to achieve through communication, it has little practical utility. Okay, so another one is that it is foundation of management. Okay, though communication is a directing function, it is important for other managerial function also. So designing plans and organization structures, motivating people to accomplish goals, and controlling organizational activities all require communication amongst managers at various levels. Okay? So it is a foundation of a good management. So communication is not, it is a means, okay, not an end. Effective communication is a means towards achieving the end, and that is goal accomplishment. It smoothens managerial operations by facilitating planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling functions. And lastly, communication is human activity. Now, since communication makes accomplishment of organizational goals possible, it is essential that people understand and like each other. So if people do not understand each other's viewpoint, there cannot be effective communication. Okay, so it is our activity as human being to communicate, and that is to talk, to converse, to speak. Okay, because we are gifted by God the power of speaking. Okay, so those are the nature of communication. Now, communication the communication process or the process of communication. Now, we made mention on the different elements of communication. So we have the sender, the one who sends the message. And then we have the receiver, the one who received the message. And then, of course, we have the message to be sent. Okay, these are the content of our communication. And then how this content of information be transferred to the sender is by means of channel or medium. Okay, the channel or the medium is a pathway by which communication happens. Okay, nowadays, with the dawn of the new technology, we have several means or channel or medium by which we can communicate. Actually, we can communicate anytime, anywhere to anybody, especially nowadays that we are in the global pandemic situation, wherein face-to-face interaction is limited, but still we can communicate. And then also feedback. Feedback is very important in communication because this is the response, this is the reply, this is the answer, okay, from the receiver, okay. If he receives the message or if he understood the message, okay. So these are the elements of communication that makes the communication process effective. Okay. Now, types of communication or kinds of communication. Now, people communicate with each other in a number of ways that depend upon the message and its context in which it is being sent. Now, there are two types of communication based on communication channels, which are verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Now, the question is, when is communication verbal and when is communication non-verbal? Okay, so we will be discussing first the verbal communication. So these are the two means of communication. Wait. Okay. So what is verbal communication? Now, verbal communication refers to the form of communication in which message is transmitted verbally, and communication here is done by the word of mouth and a piece of writing. Now, objective of every communication is to have people understood what we are trying to convey. Now, first, verbal communication means communication through spoken and written words. So it implies the use of words which makes language. So it is the ability to communicate using words. So in other words, verbal communication makes use of language or words. So it can be oral or written. Because when we speak, we make use of words. When we write, we likewise make use of words. Okay? Now, so to sum up, verbal communication can be oral or written communication. Okay. Now, oral communication implies communication through mouth. So it includes individuals conversing with each other, be it direct conversation or telephonic conversation, whether speeches, presentations, discussions are all forms of oral communication. Okay, so we speak. Okay, now what are the advantages of oral communication? So in oral communication, we get immediate feedback. Okay, we get immediate feedback from our receiver. Okay, and vice versa. It is also time saving. It is economical. It has personal touch. Okay, so oral communication, especially face-to-face conversation, has the what we call personal touch. Okay, unlike now that most of us are having online classes or online communication, uh, it lacks personal touch, though we still communicate. Okay, the essence of secrecy. There is the essence of secrecy. Okay, and it can also be, aside from individual communication, it could also have group communication. Now, what are the disadvantages of oral communication? Okay, poor retention, especially those who are uh, those who are those people who are not used to oral communication or not good in speaking or oral communication. No records, okay, no documents since it is oral, unless it is recorded, okay. Sometimes there is what we call misunderstanding among people who are communicating, and then unsuitable for lengthy messages and lack of responsibility. So these are some of the disadvantages of oral communication. Okay, so what are the forms of oral communication? So we have face-to-face communication, interviews, telephone conversation, grapevine, negotiations, meetings, lectures, speech delivery, presentations, or thesis presentations, conferences, seminars, trainings, workshops. So these are all forms of oral communication. Okay, now written communication. Okay, so written communication is a medium for communication that entails the written word. So letters, emails, and manuals are forms of written communication. So need for written of communication, the old style of communication did not have public relationship, advertising, technology, and many aspects of modern day communication. Now, what are the advantages of written communication? Uh, there is a wide access on it. There is an accuracy. Okay, lengthy messages are allowed since it is written, and written communication serves as permanent record or evidence. Okay, for example, letters of request, and others. It can also serve as legal evidence, and there is a fixed responsibility and convenience. Okay, now what about the disadvantages of written communication? So since it is written, it is time consuming, okay, costly, lack of secrecy, rigidity, okay, impersonal, And sometimes, more often than not, we encountered delayed feedback. Okay. Now, what are the different forms of written communication? So we have here email or electronic mail. We have website, memorandums, letters, report, both business and academic reports, notices, minutes of the meeting, circulars or memorandum or memoranda, manuals, handbooks, orders, inquiries, complaints, quotations, and others like sales contracts, newsletters, bulletin board notices, and others. Okay. Now, so to sum up, verbal communication can be oral communication or written communication, making use of uh, language. Okay. Now, the other forms of communication is nonverbal communication. Wait. Now, nonverbal communication, it is a communication without words. It is a process by which people or individual stimulates meaning in the mind of another person through intentional and unintentional messages through the use of body parts and voice. Okay, so in other words, nonverbal communication transmits messages without relying on language or speech. So, but instead, it uses audio signals or visuals to communicate a message. In other words, it makes use of signs, symbols. We communicate here using body parts, the use of symbols, even colors, okay, to communicate a message. Now, there are several types of nonverbal communication. So we have here kinesics, okay. So kinesics is the use of body language, or it is kinesics is body language, making use of body parts like the face, our facial expressions, our arms, our hands, our fingers, even our head, our feet, our legs. Okay, and then we have the what we call touch language or haptics. Okay, so through touching we can communicate, and then proxemics or what we call the space language, the space and distance language, and then the use of artifacts, environmental, or the use of objects or objectics in communication, and then time language, which is known as chronemics, and even silence. Okay, silence is a form of communication because silence is an indication of something. Okay, so signs, so railroad sign and other signs, okay, entails meanings, or we can communicate through signs. And then the use of paralanguage, making use of our voice, or what we call the vocalic language. Now, we will be discussing these types of nonverbal communication next time. Okay, so these are the different forms or types of communication based on channel. So again, we have verbal and non-verbal communication. So for non-verbal, we make use of language, or for verbal, we make use of language, and and it can be oral or written. And for non-verbal, we make use of signs, symbols, body parts, objects, and others. Okay, so thank you for attending our virtual class for this afternoon. Keep safe, everyone, and God bless us all. Thank you.